Well, I'm not really shocked, but yet I am in a way. As you all know, the Xbox did not sell very well, and Forza Horizon 2, or whatever the hell it was called, didn't sell at all. It was an utter piece of shit. And a lot of people in the Xbox division are saying moreover. And I'm mostly saying that too. Because, the PlayStation just took the market. It just stole it. And I'm not surprised that Super Mario Maker ended up hitting number six and all this other shit. And, Black Bond just running around saying half the stupid shit he's saying without realizing it. I mean, this is a guy who said that Nintendo couldn't sell Bayonetta, when in reality, Platinum Games' only real hit of a game was Metal Gear Solid Revengeance and maybe Transformers Destruction. I haven't gotten to play that because I'm in some financial problems because I'm in the middle of moving. I won't be able to catch up on a few games for a while, anyways. Maybe until like 3 or 4 months from now. But, anyways, things got even more stupider and not really all that surprising. I mean, everybody out there thinking that PlayStation, or at least Black Bond, thinking that the PlayStation is a hit because it's about power and not about and about graphics capability, not anything to do with gameplay and gameplay. It's all about story and graphics. That's it. That's all you need. You just throw the gameplay away, which is the and unfortunately, with Arkham Knight making as much money as it did, that's sad but true because Arkham Knight is still a disappointment. I mean, it's got half good gameplay, and then the Batmobile's another piece of shit. And not forgetting inconsistencies in the story, but that's mostly due to DC Comics and Dan Didio firing, or DC Comics firing Paul Didi, mainly because Dan Didio wants to take DC comic books in a more different direction, and I think Dan Didio is a complete fucking idiot. That had nothing to do with the developers of the game. The developers of the because it's a DC comic books game, so DC opted to put in their own writers on the Arkham series game, which is why Paul Dini was the writer of the first two Arkham Knight games, and then was fired and not making the last two. So the blame for Arkham Knight being half-assed as it was mainly goes to DC Comics error and Dan Didio, and it's probably. I mean, they were probably going to end up with more disasters. Even though certain hardcore gamers out there who thinks that everyone who works on a video game is an automatic developer and movies and comic books don't exist. Pachi, I'm looking at you on that one. And yeah, I mean it. If Blackmon, if he was ever going to watch this video, or which never is going to happen, or if any of his fans tell him this, that go back. I mean, yeah, Nintendo didn't sell Bayonetta 2 very well, but here's the thing. Go back and look at Bayonetta 1 sale. In fact, go look at all Platinum Games' sales, and you will find that all of their games, except maybe two of them, I think Transformers Destruction was kind of a hit, but and also Metal Gear Solid Revengeance were really their only smash hits. I keep saying it, but nope, 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 nope. With Blackmon, it's all about graphics, and not only that. I mean, let's forget that the PlayStation 4 has an easy to use interface, and you can seamlessly install a video game in no time flat faster than what Xbox can do, and even the Wii U. And it's got a much faster interface. I mean, it just wins hands down. In fact, some cases, the Wii U is actually faster than the Xbox One. But mainly, I just want to talk about this new fad that's been taken over. It's called complete denial. And nobody completely denies more than both the Sony and Xbox fans. And I'm not saying PS4 in a sense of the way. Just hear me out. I admit that the PS4 is a massive success. But mostly the Sony fanboys are in complete denial when it comes to the failure of the PlayStation 3. And it's still there. What do I mean? Well, I mean, people are even talking about like when the PlayStation 3 launched, it had this great controller and DualShock, which is funny because the DualShock didn't exist on the PlayStation 3 until, you know, certain lawsuits and a bunch of people were customers were complaining that Sony finally brought DualShock 3 on the controller. And not only that, Sony blatantly lied, saying that the DualShock 3 was going to interfere with their new six axis bullshit that never took off. And of course, you know, there's still people defending that the PlayStation 3 and even the 4 doesn't need a doesn't need either a 2 millimeter jack back then. Back with the Xbox 360, of course, it did, and that's what it was. I think it was a 2.5 millimeter jack, and now the PS4 has a 3.5 millimeter jack, which I'm going to get into later. Which, yeah, Sony never put that in their PlayStation 3, but now seeing the massive success of PlayStation 4 and the fact that they actually put a headphone jack on there, kind of inerts that and makes it, everything that they say still bullshit. And that's just it. Yes, the PlayStation 4 is a massive fucking powerhouse, just like the PlayStation 2 was. But still, facts are facts. The Xbox 360 still kicked the PlayStation 3 in overall sales, only until the end when Microsoft went batshit crazy did it become more self-apparent that, you know, that the PlayStation 3 started to overtake the Xbox 360. And not forgetting that some people are willing to admit that the PS4 has a less powerful CPU than what the PlayStation 3 had. It's just that they're like saying, I mean, you got people in denial basically saying, oh, well, it's designed very much like the cell processor. Or some people saying, oh, but they could still make an emulator. Yeah, they're still saying that stupid shit. It's not going to happen, people. It's not going to fucking happen. And I'm done explaining to you why. I mean, it's pretty fucking obvious. In making up specs inside the PlayStation 3 or making up specs inside the more popular PlayStation 4, or saying that your PlayStation 4 has this imitational cell processor that comes from the cell family isn't going to help it. The PlayStation 3 was a train wreck. Deal with it and get out of the denial. And the controller was a joke. And I'm not surprised that Forza Horizon 2, or whatever the fuck it was called, was a flop. And there's still people in denial on that because it didn't even make the top 10 list. Super Mario Maker did. And I knew Super Mario Maker was going to be a hit, mainly because it came out at the right time and when Nintendo needed it. And Nintendo's really good at that. And also, Xbox is ditching its let's go buy out all these third party shit that they used to do. Mainly because it didn't work on their original Xbox. I mean, the original Bioware game, Star Wars The Old Republic, almost went completely unnoticed. And even Jade Empire went completely unnoticed until they were released on PC and Mac. I'm not kidding. And the reason why Mass Effect 1 was a massive success was that it was shown on the more popular 360 than over the less popular PlayStation 3. Even though people like Zephyrnix will never admit it because he's too busy trying to quote unquote own PlayStation ponies because he won't let go of the old days and won't accept that the fact that the world has changed massively. Sorry, Zephyrnix, but it is true. I mean, we're no longer in the era of the PlayStation 3 with Sony was just fucking up everything that they touched. It's now PlayStation 4, and they are the top gunners. It's just the way it is now. But the thing about Forza Horizon 2 failing and me not being really surprised is how many Forza games were released on Xbox One? Three. Xbox One is still a fairly brand new console, and it's already got uh, three Forza games. You know, Forza Horizon being the last one. That is called milking your property to death, and it's only been like what, a year since the Xbox One came out. Really? So basically, we had two Forza games that came out literally exact in 1 year. That's not a good fucking thing to do, Microsoft. Then you got the people who are in denial over its controller. The Xbox One controller. When I spouted out certain truths, what did somebody say? Oh, but the Xbox One controller is still good. Still good. Okay, that is a mark of denial when you say shit like that, or at least half denial. Because let's understand something. The controller, the Xbox One controller had to be redesigned from the ground up. And Zephyrnix won't even admit to this. A 3.5 millimeter jack, which now had two, not one, but two peripherals that Microsoft had planned for the Xbox One to be thrown out. The first one being the Kinect, which is now just a doorstop, and the second one being that special headphone jack or that little bizarre connector that you had to get because now there's a headphone jack on the controller itself being sold with every Xbox One. So that's two peripherals for the Xbox One being totally thrown out the fucking window. And these two peripherals were supposed to be necessary and needed to run Xbox One. That's a train wreck. And not only that, they had to redesign the bumper buttons. But that's not the real train wreck. The real train wreck was when they made the original controllers. They spent over $1 million in research. And they said it even in the whole behind the scenes of the Xbox One that they spent $1 million designing the Xbox One controller to be perfect for all players. Just let that thought sink in your head. And it's a good controller. These are all massive, complete fuck ups. And the redesign just absolutely says that this wasn't a good controller. This was a disaster. A straight up disaster. Just like people who defend the original Duke controller on the original Xbox. That thing had to be redesigned into the new S controller, which became what now known as the Xbox 360 controller. Mostly. I mean, the Duke controller was basically a redesigned giant Sega controller. And when they shrunk it down, they basically took the NES Max shape and used that shape for their 360. And yes, the original PlayStation controller was just a revived Nintendo Super NES controller with two triggers added on it. You know what? Let's face it. Sony and Microsoft has never had originality, but Sony just knew how to sell their shit better than what Microsoft did. It's just that Sony had a period when they created their PlayStation 3 and completely shitted themselves to death. And add the insult to injury on the controller deniability. Rockstar needs a special adapter to run the older Xbox 360 Rock Band shit. While the PlayStation 3 or the PlayStation 4 can run the old, peripheral Rockstar peripherals with no problems, even the wired stuff. And the Xbox, if you had the old wire guitars and shit like that, The only place you can use them now is the garbage can because they're completely useless. The adapter only works with the wireless shit. And the reason why is because Microsoft ditched their old Wi-Fi controllers that were in the that was in the 360, which had to be done anyways, and went with a cheap imitation of Bluetooth with direct Wi-Fi. Even if they went with Bluetooth, they would still have this problem. But the fact that they did this was really stupid. And Sony went with Bluetooth. If Microsoft went with Bluetooth as well, they wouldn't have this problem. Hell, even Nintendo doesn't have this problem. And by the way, Nintendo has the better Bluetooth, but that's just details. By the way, I'm not kidding. Just go look up Nintendo specs. It has a better Bluetooth than what Sony has. I'm basically talking about the Wii U having a better Bluetooth. But yeah. And of course, everybody's saying that one of the main reasons that the Xbox One failed was the DRM, and that is true. But there were other factors. That it's mainly the Xbox One is a glorified DVR system and slower and has a horrible interface. Do Xbox fans still admit that? Hell no. I mean, even the Sony haters like Zephyrnix still doesn't admit to that. That the Xbox One is a glorified DVR player and slower, and its interface is just clunky as shit. Now, as for Halo, do I think it's going to be a success? Maybe. I mean, Halo 4 was not that great of a game, and Halo Master Chief Collection wasn't that great. And yeah, they got their writer back from Destiny, who, by the way, now reports are coming out that the writer just that the whole Destiny story debacle turns out may have been more or less his fault because he wanted to create a linear shooter when Bungie asked him to create a MMO, and he's like, no, no, we're going to create a linear shooter regardless of what Bungie says. See, here's the thing: when your bosses tell you to create a specific something, you don't go behind their backs and create something else. Basically, just let you know he created more of a linear co-op game, single player co-op sort of game, which is basically Halo, or a game that can be played by single player and not multi-mask player, which is what Bungie wanted. But yeah, he's back at 343 Studios doing the linear shooting shit that he wanted to do. But the thing I've never liked about the Halo 4, I mean, yeah, fine, it was a successful game and actually put the original Xbox semi on the map. Was now they got some new enemy that popped up out of everywhere, and everybody just magically knows what this new enemy is for reasons. That's bad storytelling 101. I may not really know about Halo, but I do know basic storylines. And when you introduce a new alien threat that came out of nowhere and have all your good guys suddenly just know what this new enemy is, yeah, that's not good. But I do believe that Halo is a shell of its former self, and I don't think it's going to be the smash hit that everybody says it's going to be, but I could be wrong, and I'm willing to accept that if I'm wrong. Maybe it'll probably repeat what the original Halo did and, you know, put it semi on the map. I mean, it didn't really help Xbox One. The original Xbox, it still flopped as a console. But there you go. And I still think the NX is going to kill Nintendo. See ya.